He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. It's Friday. I'm Mark Levin. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. You know, I wasn't even going to address this, but watching the news today, watching the piling on, and watching, really, the shameful inability of conservatives to defend one of our own is really awful. One of the great things about Andrew Breitbart was that he was a warrior. And people have praised him for being a warrior. And then here we are in a battle, which I'm about to explain. Then some of the very people who praised him have either left the battlefield or worse. Here's what I'm talking about. Let me be clear. Miss Fluke, the individual who testified the other day at the request of Democrats only and before Democrats only, Miss Fluke is 30 years old. The media have tried to give you the impression that she's much younger and just a law student being put upon. Ms. Fluke does not represent most women. She does not represent most women that I know. And most women that I know would not be testifying before Congress, before the national media, talking about all the sex they've engaged in, and then have the nerve to demand that the citizens of this nation pay for contraceptives. Ms. Fluke represents the 1960s sexual revolution, as they called it. She represents that mentality. She's a radical feminist. This isn't to be cheered or embraced. This is not how we parents raise our daughters and sons. We try to raise gentlemen and ladies. And it is offensive, in fact, preposterous, that Ms. Fluke and her Democrat political handlers in and out of the media presume to represent and speak for all the women in this nation and all the parents of young ladies in this nation. They absolutely do not. If this is the kind of life Miss Fluke wishes to live, that's up to her. But we're not compelled to accept it or defend it, let alone pay for it. Miss Fluke is a 30-year-old woman who's going to law school. She's a grown woman. She's an adult. She's responsible for her own behavior. She's responsible for paying her own way. And by going public, as she has, intentionally becoming a political partisan and advocate, which is her past, by the way, she had to know exactly what she was doing when she testified openly and publicly at the request of Nancy Pelosi and the congressional Democrats. The media are attempting to make Miss Fluke out to be a sympathetic figure. I don't find her to be sympathetic at all. She's an activist. Why should I be sympathetic for what? And what she demands is nothing more than outrageous. Ms. Fluke did not testify for cancer patients. She did not testify for heart patients. She did not testify for diabetes patients. Ms. Fluke did not testify for the handicapped. She did not testify for individuals inflicted with Alzheimer's and on and on. No, Ms. Fluke testified for free contraceptives. Let me add something else here. As I sit here right now, there are hundreds of thousands of young people, not only Ms. Fluke's age, but much younger, young men and women who have volunteered to serve this nation in our armed forces, who have and are prepared to put their lives on the line, several thousand of whom have and have died in recent years defending this nation, who are true heroes, who are true role models, who are worth hearing from and knowing about. They weren't granted scholarships to Georgetown Law School. They weren't asked to testify about the First Amendment and religious liberty and individual liberty, despite putting their lives on the line to defend them. These are the young people who deserve our praise and our affection. These are the young people we should be listening to. They don't ask for anything. They're givers, not takers. And there are millions of young people in this country who are going to school, who are taking part-time jobs, who are helping their families with their small businesses and farms, who are contributing to this society, and they too deserve our acknowledgement and support. They're not the takers either. They're not political partisans who show up at hearings. And they don't believe the rest of us owe them anything, let alone free contraceptives. And yet few of them will receive or have received the national spotlight like Ms. Fluke. You see, for the left, this 30-year-old adult who chose to go to law school, Ms. Fluke, represents what they stand for. Radical feminism, dependence, subsidies, victimhood, and cultural decline. Ms. Fluke, sadly, is a casualty, a pawn of the left, which is exactly why she was asked to testify, which is why she's all over the liberal news outlets, which is why Barack Obama called her today. Have you ever heard of Brian Terry? Agent Terry was a very brave young man. He was a U.S. Border Patrol tactical team member. He was shot in the back with an AK-47 while he and other agents were in a firefight with Mexican bandits. And while he was on the ground dying from his wound, you see, the bullet severed his spine and the main artery to his heart. He managed to call for assistance. The helicopter arrived within minutes, but he died on the way to the hospital. You see, Brian Terry was only 40 years old. As I said, he was shot in the back with an AK-47. An AK-47 sold to Mexican drug smugglers at the direction of the Obama administration. The scandal is called Fast and Furious. I wonder, did President Obama ever call the Terry family? When Eric Holder was asked a few months ago during a hearing if he had called the Terry family, he said he had not. Only later did he make an attempt. Folks, there really are two Americas. The America of Miss Fluke and her Democrat advocates, and the America of Brian Terry and the others I talked about. Oh, yes, and one more thing. I want the leftists at NBC, CNN, and the other so-called news outlets who are dressed up as journalists but are nothing of the sort. I want you to understand something. You don't get to decide who the rest of us listen to. You don't get to decide who the rest of us admire. You're not going to succeed in driving Rush Limbaugh from the airwaves. I don't care how many cowardly Republicans you speak to. I don't care how many inside the Beltway pseudo-conservatives you speak to and so forth. Our nation is teetering. Everything we believe in is being undermined. The future for our children and grandchildren is perilous. And you in the media do the bidding of the very politicians who've brought us to this dire state. You don't get to dictate to us. You don't even get to influence us. Try as you might. Rush isn't going anywhere because there's tens of millions of us standing by his side. And we're not going anywhere either. You say nothing about the unconstitutional acts of this president. You say nothing of the policies that are bankrupting our nation. You do nothing to expose the lies and deceit of this administration. In fact, if you're not covering it up, you're cheering it on. This is why we have no respect for you, why your audience and readership are plummeting, and will continue to. Now, we will not let you take down Rush or anyone else. In fact, I think I speak for tens of millions of Americans when I say, you can go to hell.
Mark Levin.